suppose what I'd like to do really, I mean, we've talked a little bit about well-being, but I'd like to really ask you guys what exactly you think well-being is. I'd like this to be an interactive section rather than just me talking. So has anybody got any views on what well-being is? Because this is what we're talking about this morning, but it'd be probably quite good to have a definition of what that is.
Is it being positive, Brian? Is it living positively?
Yeah, that's a good start. So positive mental state is certainly helpful to people's well-being. Anything else?
Having a manageable life.
Yeah, that's a nice term actually. Yeah, manageable. So
Being happy.
Okay, happy. Right. Okay.
Being content in their own body.
Yeah.
Having good friends and family around you.
That's a very important aspect of it, and we'll come to that in a little bit. We'll talk about the wheel of life and how coaches use that to try and improve people's well-being. So we'll come to that in a moment. Yeah. Anybody else?
Being able to sleep tonight.
Yeah, sleep, incredibly important thing to do, isn't it? And we begin to realise even more so the health benefits of a good night's sleep. And when we don't have good sleep, the medical complications we can have with that. Right, so quite a lot of things that have come in there. It's interesting though, when you start to try and define it, we've been doing this for at least 2,000 years. So the Greeks were trying to decide what well-being was. And they had a couple of theories. One was what they called hedonic theory, or where we get the word hedonism from, so this idea of pleasure. And they were actually talking about the balance of pleasure against obviously stress, anxiety, and pain. So that was one view. There was also, I can never say this word properly, but eudaimonic theory, and that was to do with duty, self-actualisation, and really that sort of higher thing, rather than just enjoying yourself all the time. What was that sort of greater purpose that people would have so they made their lives fulfilled? Possibly with challenges coming along, overcoming those challenges and feeling the benefits of that. So there's two theories that writers still talk about today, but I suppose a more modern, there's a number of different definitions for that. All time I could have brought, for example, the World Health Organisation's definition, and quite a few others. But really, the thing that comes out of it, it's a dynamic state. I think that's one of the terms that is used. So rather than either having well-being or not, we can fluctuate fairly obviously, depending on what's going on in our lives at the moment. Also genetics, some people, they really are glass half full as opposed to half empty. But it's also our circumstances that we find ourselves in. So obviously somebody living in a councillor's flat in the middle of a council estate I come from the Midlands, so I visualise, say, Birmingham, their environment is going to have a major effect on their well-being when they're, in a concrete box, sort of 15 floors up, with crime going on around them. Not a good place to be. But people can still get over that and still have a positive state in many cases, even though that's the case. Right, so I think that the important thing to think is we've talked about physical health, we've talked about mental health, but the important thing is it's more than just the absence of illness. It's a fair thing to say, isn't it? So it's more than that, and we've touched on a few of those different things. Okay, so we've talked about so other areas that can have a major impact on our well-being of ourselves or our workforce is obviously finances, how well paid they are they worrying about, as I say, 3 or 4 paychecks away from being homeless, relationships and romance, usually an important part of most people's lives. Also social life, and I think it's already been mentioned, friends, family, and those sort of social networks. But one thing I mentioned to a couple of people earlier was there's also this idea of our purpose in life. So quite often it's viewed as spirituality. Now I think in our sort of secular society, tend to talk about that thing. Many people just think, oh, that's religion. Most people aren't, I think, interested nowadays. But it can be anything that's really, we're just trying to look at, well, where are we in the scheme of things in this universe, in this life, or whatever. So people that have some sort of outlook in that regard, whether it's organised religion or not, that seems to have a positive impact on people's well-being. And one other thing that's really interesting, a bit of research coming out here, is that those that do good to others, sort of altruistic sort of actions, that can have a very positive reward, not only for society but for the person themselves.
Is that because it gives people a sense of community, Brian?
I think that's one of the things, yeah, but there's just something that seems to be within us, or within most of us, that when you give out, there's a reward coming back for yourself there. So some interesting ideas on that. So in a roundabout, that's my view of well-being, and that's what sort of comes from some of the reading that I've done. But if we apply that to the workplace, how do people feel about that? Is this something that, as employers, you feel you have a responsibility for?
100%.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I think a lot of the bigger firms don't have that in mind. I think they struggle to get the business running profitable, and they can't keep thinking about everybody. I think it's more up to perhaps their managers or their foremen to follow that side on.
Yeah.
I don't think bosses can look at it but don't put it down as quick as they pick it up. Perhaps they can finance something to help, but I don't think they can look at individuals personally.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That's honest views.
What Claire was saying was interesting about just knowing people's names and about just things about their family. So if I walk along and I know that somebody's got 2 kids, and someone goes, "Oh, my son was off sick today," and you go, "Oh right, yeah, so and you kind of like, at least if you've got 70 guys, I'm not saying that it makes everybody over the moon happy, but I think it can help with your well-being just to know that you're not just a number, but that somebody actually cares about you and actually knows about your family and has taken the time and the effort, because it's a difficult thing to do. I mean, some people just have a knack with learning names and ages and things. I used to be a teacher and it was hideous to learn names and things, but it is important because we are more than just a number and we are more than just a job role. So I just think that can help well-being, and it's not a massive thing.
I was thinking if you're going to ask somebody how they are in the morning, then be prepared to actually find out the answer. Because we all go, "How are you?" And you go, "All right." And they go, "Fine." And then they go, "I went to a meeting." They don't actually want to know. So if somebody went, "No, actually, I'm not very well," most people go, "Oh, shit, I wasn't expecting that." I didn't actually want you to give me an answer. I was just being polite. So if you ask someone how they are, just have 2 minutes to actually find out.
I think you've got to be careful because when you've got to talk to people, you can end up taking on their problems. I was a manager, so I know what I was faced with, and yeah, you feel very sympathetic and you'd like to help everybody, but at some points in time you can't help them. You can make allowances in what they do to lessen the blows of work, but to actually get over their problem, you need to pass that or get them to go and see somebody who can help.
Yeah.
And that is hard if you've got more than 1 or 2 people in similar or completely different circumstances. You do need to know where to advise them to go.
Yeah.
And you can't take it home yourself, because you do take it home.
So I think there's a couple of interesting points coming out. One of that is, with our interactions with our workforce, are they genuine? And I think people soon sense whether they are or not. So just saying, "How are you?" and it can be a very formal thing, and you sense when that happens. And when people are genuinely interested, you pick that up. But I think it's also important, that's it, when we do perhaps start to pick up that there's issues with our friends or our workforce, that we know where to go with that, and referral routes to appropriate agencies or other help. So yeah. one thing that's perhaps just worth mentioning is Public Health England have done quite a bit of work on the workforce, and they identify three main areas of concern that really should be honed in on. One area is musculoskeletal injuries. So we look at the amount of sickness within the sort of nation's workforce. That's a very high amount. But then after that, it's stress, anxiety, mental illness. Also a little bit around a lack of fitness and a lack of so obesity can be an issue and a lack of exercise and activity. So bearing that in mind, you can sort of say, well, okay, we've got to consider. Well, I'm sure we'll come to occupational health more, but you know, those things that are important for us physically. So whether it's safe lifting, manual handling, whether it's how we sit at our desk if we're on a computer all day or our workforce, those are quite important things from that point of view. But then after that, we're dealing an awful lot again with the mental state of our workforce. So, I mean, what sort of things can influence, do you think, mental health of our workforce?
Well, Brian, you just reminded me of something that at the time I found really interesting. Dan and I sit on Island Road's Health and Safety Forum, and the other week they had, during their Health and Safety Week, they had Professor Tim Marsh from Birmingham University come down, occupational behavioural psychologist, talking about culture in health and safety. But he said it could be culture about anything. And one of the things that really struck me was he said how important it is to make sure that your workforce are taking enough sleep. And he mentioned 7 hours. And if you don't get enough sleep, if you don't get your 7 hours solid sleep, your brain doesn't process toxic materials. Do you know anything about
Well,
importance of sleep?
That's right. I mean, as I said at the beginning, there's an awful lot studied around about sleep. There's this idea that if we don't have the correct amount of sleep, and certainly that applies especially to shift workers, those on nights, can be huge problems. But yeah, there's physical problems in the short term, so like I say, that toxicity, but also long term. So there's links with Alzheimer's, you know, when people haven't had enough sleep in years. So yeah.
There's also sleep and sleep, isn't there?
That's right, yeah.
You know, you can be asleep, but
Yeah.
you can be not resting or
That's right.
resting.
So a good example of that would be people that, you know, going back to what Claire was saying, drinking 10 pints a day, and then well, I'm going to sleep after that. But it isn't necessarily the right sleep. You're comatose for that period of time, and you usually wake up fairly in the morning, dehydrated, and obviously the signs of possibly a hangover. So that's definitely an issue, getting the right sort of sleep as well. And obviously it links in also with anxiety. So if people are anxious, people have broken sleep, or certainly not the correct, you know, these various types of sleep that you have to be fully refreshed.
He also said that in tests, cumulative, I'll try to get this right, Dan, cumulative tiredness has the same effect on decision making as being drunk. Which is, when you think about it in construction, you're in charge of machines and in charge of making decisions, you know, you wouldn't think of going on site and operating machinery or carrying out your work if you were, you know, 3 sheets to the wind. But if tiredness can have the same effect, then really that's a huge thing to watch out for.
That's right. And there's been research on that, hasn't there, where they've sort of deprived people of sleep and then put them into sort of a clinical sort of setting or a test setting where they'd be sort of driving in effect on a video game, and they'll see very similar reaction levels to that. It's intoxicating. Okay. So thinking also about, is there any other sort of things that we sort of think perhaps could be affecting our workforce which is detrimental to their well-being.
Deadlines, pressure.
Okay. Yeah.
Mainly financial, I would say, a lot of people as well. So.
Okay.
Family worries.
Yeah. So some of those things that we mentioned beforehand about those things that are the building blocks to well-being. I said when there's a lack of it or a negative aspect to that, then it's going to have an effect on their health. I mean, one other thing that's closely linked with mental health and anxiety and stress to some extent is that around substance misuse. So we've already mentioned drinking as can be as a factor, but you know, in the society we now live, substance misuse, drug taking is commonplace. I would suggest. We know that we have on the island, it's about average for a semi-rural location, substance misuse, you know, and levels of it. So not necessarily high levels of crack use, but you know, opiate users, so are still taking heroin, methadone, those sort of drugs. You know, a reasonable amount. A lot of cannabis use, but yeah, obviously other substances. So the stimulants, especially what they call the NPS, novel psychoactive substances, or what used to be called legal highs. You know, there's quite a lot of this going on in the community, which obviously has an effect on our workforce. And I don't know if anybody has any views on that or has any experience of that.
I think it's getting worse.
Yeah.
I think if you drug tested my workforce, it would probably half.
Okay.
I think at the schools it's worse. I think it's if they don't do it, they lose a group of friends. Important friends.
Yeah.
And I think that's widespread. So I think a lot of children do it just to be one of them.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's a potential workforce then coming through, isn't it?
It seems to become more acceptable.
Yeah, but the trouble is that the family that are working to keep the household going, if they know about it, they're going to work with that in their head,
Oh, yes.
which is another distraction from their work.
Yeah.
I think then it also it causes financial problems to fuel the habit I've got.
Yeah.
Even this last week, we had issues on site because of somebody getting into financial difficulties, borrowing money, and they want the loan paid back. So they spiral downwards once they've got these habits.
Also, I've seen in the past so-called experts saying like cannabis use doesn't make much difference to a person at all. But the paranoia, even many years after they'd even stopped, is
It's interesting actually that one because in my previous jobs, it's been said I used to work in the prison service. I was head of strategy for the 3 prisons. Did a degree in substance misuse studies, and we had to do quite a bit of sort of study on the use of cannabis. What was really interesting was that the old stuff that people smoked in the 1960s was perhaps more, not ideal, but it was a natural product. They talk about cannabis now as being, or the modern forms as being one of the first genetically modified crops. So what they were doing, they were looking to increase the what they call THC content, tetrahydrocannabinoid, get that as high as possible to get the maximum effect. And at the same time, there was a natural chemical that was almost like an antipsychotic, which kept people, with a straight and narrow perhaps, and that went down dramatically. So it's not a huge surprise then that the modern cannabis use, with these new sort of what can be referred to as skunk, have a major effect on people's mental health. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Actually, another interesting fact was in the 1970s, there was a doctor at Parkhurst Prison, and he was one of the first that wrote a paper on the effect of cannabis on mental health within prisons. And that's sort of where when it just sort of started to get flagged up. So it's it does seem to be a so, but it's interesting though, isn't it, the sort of comment that, well, going back to the idea, quite often I'll ask employers, because we do some work with employers around mental health now, I'll sort of say to them, how is it to get, you know, new workers, you know, is it easy, is it difficult? Most people are saying it's quite difficult to get a good workforce, or good workers in. I don't know if that's people's experience.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then is there perhaps more need to, you know, you perhaps invest in them in training to become good at their job? Is it actually important now to try perhaps to invest a little bit more in people's well-being? I think I sort of think of the two extremes. You've got, you know, these blue chip companies in London or wherever, and they have, you know, you go in and see the way in which they work, and people can come and go as they please. You've got table tennis tables, you know, one side, and they're all creative thinkers, just allowed to get on with it. I mean, that is really looking after people's
Trouble
well-being.
is, and you hear all like the flexible work and all
Yeah.
this, in the construction, it really is
Yeah,
near on impossible.
yes.
Beanbagging table tennis, it's not.
Yeah.
No, because you've just got, you wouldn't be there during daylight hours or whatever, it just doesn't.
Just let me finish.
Yeah.
That's the one extreme. The other extreme is you could use your workforce as being totally expendable. You can burn people out, and you'll get somebody else coming in. You can get somebody straight in. Now, that's pretty unethical, isn't it? I'm sure nobody's going to do like that. So the question is, as employers, where are you within that spectrum? With 10 being Google, and 0 being, I don't know what, Burmese Railway, in the Second World War, where they worked out how many people would die for each mile. I mean, where, I think it's an idea of where you sit within that, and what are the, what would you be doing in the future to assist your workers'
I
well-being?
think part of it is just about being a person, only in that if you crack down on people, first of all, you've got a duty of care, so you can get in trouble as the employer for letting somebody go if you have to prove that you're trying to help them. So if somebody came to me and they opened up and they said, okay, I've got a problem with drugs or alcohol or whatever, I've got to demonstrate that I am trying to help them as part of their contract. If I go and fire everybody, then first of all I'll be in trouble because someone will probably take me to court, but then second of all it's also who's going to build the houses. So I mean, my company, we've done toolbox talks, and what we generally say is we acknowledge there's a problem, fair enough, but people will come and talk to me and it's nice if they feel they can open up. But I said I'd rather text me at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock the night before, or text me at 5 a.m. or whatever and just say, I've had a bit to drink, I'm not coming in. I would rather you do that than you get on a Manitou at 9 a.m. and you're driving around and you smash into a house because you're hungover or whatever. So I'm not saying, you know, there are no repercussions for things, but at the same time, I'd rather some people be honest with me and say, this is the situation. If they do it, obviously you talk to managing directors and things, but it's one of those, it's case by case, isn't it? If it's like the first time something like this has happened and you go, okay, you didn't come in, I would respect that a lot more. So I think personally, the way that we've dealt with it is quite good because it's meant that we haven't lost loads of workers. They feel that they can open up to us, and actually I can then signpost them and say, if you do have this problem, have a chat with me and I'll see if I can point you in the direction towards getting some help. And you're not just going to get fired on the spot, but they equally know, because we're quite open, if they do come in, then it's going to be worse if they get on that machine and then I do an alcohol test. So.
That sounds like a good way of addressing it. And are you aware of the local services that you can refer people to?
Yes, I've got little cards, and there's a company, I found them on LinkedIn, is it Lighthouse? I think it's called Lighthouse or Lightbulb, something like that. And it's these little cards, I've got them in my office, I've got them in the canteens for the guys. I've got big posters up, and they're kind of like Samaritans for people in construction. So they know that if they've got a problem, they can talk to me. We've got a health and safety guy. If they don't want to talk to me, they can talk to the health and safety guy. If they don't want to talk to either of us, then they can pick up one of the cards, it's on the table, slip it into their pocket, no one's going to know. It's on posters. There's lots of different resources. Or I could point them towards, for example, the NHS and kind of what Claire was talking about, there are external resources if you want to go speak face to face, and they are aware of it because we do a toolbox talk, and although they kind of laugh and joke and everyone's kind of going, oh, you know, it's all going through the roof, actually the amount of people that come to my office is quite nice, because it means that they are opening up. As everyone goes, I think it's still a little bit like 100 years ago where they go, oh, men have no feelings and stiff upper lip and all this kind of, but actually loads of people in my company, they just need someone to listen and to feel like they're not going to be made fun of for opening up about feeling anxious or PTSD. We've got ex-servicemen, and I didn't realise that one of them, it was quite sad because the sound of a drill set them off. They came to speak to me, and it was not nice, but you kind of think, oh God, like you don't think about that, do you? But now I know you can do something about it. So
Lighthouse Club, it's called.
sorry?
Lighthouse Club.
Lighthouse Club.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brian, I'd just like to ask what you thought, what part diet might play, and I mean, in my company over the years, I've tried to address that with people who are constantly ill, and they live off of meals and fast food. And I think, wasn't there a study done in the prisons where changed certain people's behaviour if they went on a...
You can tell him I'll answer that question in about 15 minutes.
All right. I mean, that's it. There's no doubt that has an effect on our mental state as well. So something we used to notice, for example, was we're on a residential wing within the prison. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Of course, they're residents, but a drug treatment unit, and prison stayed with us for 12 weeks. Took them through the programme. But what you noticed as they came off their drugs, quite often there'd be 2 or 3 or 4 heaped tablespoons of sugar going into their tea. It was just to get that little bit of something. You know. So in the same way, you know, with our diet, if we're eating a very processed diet, you know, sort of white bread all the time, things like that, you know, there's no doubt there is these spikes of our glucose levels, which, you know, I think is generally recognised isn't very good for us. Whereas if we're eating a more balanced diet, then we have a steadier, you know, which has a positive effect on our
You
physical
also have
health.
a problem, which I've experienced a lot. People come into work not having had a breakfast for whatever reason, having no money, buying work, and they're going to do a whole day's work on nothing. All right, there you go and get a cup of water out of the tap, but that's their living. And they have no funds readily available, which is a problem.
Never heard of that before.
Well, again, it's all down to how their home life is,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's how it is.
So just to conclude then, because we're just coming up to time, so how can well-being affect our performance and safety in the workplace? I think it's clear it can have quite a major impact on the performance of people within the companies, and it's what do we do about that, how do we address it? Well, that's a session later on this morning, so we'll leave it at that. So, but is there any final questions? No? Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.